as fire chief. He is still sticking around the department for the foreseeable future, just as a firefighter and to help me out and help the rest of the officers out. Dale did serve as 12 years as fire chief and 30 years as one of our command staff officers. So a good chunk of his time has been spent running the department and leading the department on calls and trainings and everything. We had a couple staffing changes. Obviously, myself as chief, we replaced an assistant chief, another one who retired, Dale Kelter, stepped down as well. So we added one assistant chief and then 3 new lieutenants. So we had got quite a bit of moving around a little bit in our command staff, but it's still a great group of people, and everyone's pretty committed to helping out and learning the ropes and helping myself out too. We have 5 members in the entry-level firefighter class. They're studying at NITC. Those are night classes once a week, and they were actually holding this class at our fire station. So there's 5 from our department, and then I think there's another 10 or 15 from various departments around the county. And then we have 3 members in the Fire 2 CERT class. They're taking that in Middleton on Thursday nights and a few weekends. Then we have 7 in the Fire Officer CERT class. And then we've got multiple people taking incident command structure classes, something that since COVID, Wisconsin Emergency Management has started doing a lot more online classes with their ICS classes, which helps out people that to get into the class versus having to travel to parts of the state. And they're doing a lot more night classes too than they used to. So getting a lot of people through that, kind of a requirement through FEMA and through the state to have some of those classes in our command staff. Other than that, we've had 13 incidents so far this year since January 1. A little bit low, but this always seems to be our low time of year. We average usually about 120, 125 calls a year. And then we have some, if you drive past Summer Pond Saturday morning, we're going to have some an ice rescue class. A bunch of them are doing their classroom time actually tonight, and then they'll be in the water. If there's any ice left, they'll be in the icy water on Saturday. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so as I said, I presented you guys with the 2020 annual report. I'm hoping to do this every year. It is something that hasn't been done in this department. I don't think in the history of the department. And if it has, it's been probably well over a couple decades. So I believe in us having a good working relationship and being transparent with what we're doing. Since I didn't have kind of a template to go off of from years past, I created this using other mechanisms to create it. And my hopes is that I can build on this report and every year kind of make it better and more informative. But just to go through it real quick. So you'll see the first couple pages are just kind of explanatory as far as the table of contents and then my message. That mission statement is a new mission statement. That's what we adopted as our new mission statement for the department after I took office. The oath and the law enforcement code of ethics, that's a standard statewide and national code of ethics and oath that is recited upon taking office. You'll see the village officials, that's the current up to date. And then you have the organizational chart as to how the organization is broken down. That includes village-wide. I've included an employee section, which gives you our current employees and their positions and kind of what they're working on. This is a short list. It's not all inclusive. There's other responsibilities. It just would have gotten a lot longer. So I kind of picked the main things that everybody is working on, and then to provide an opportunity for questions of what things might mean. But that is the employee section, and then probably the information that most people would be really interested in is the data. And so if you look down, the first page is basically just deals with the fences. And if you see, the animal complaints are way up, from stray dogs or stray animals to disturbances to animal bites. So for instance, this year we had 7 animal bites in comparison to 1 handled in 2019. And when I mean this is 2020 data. So in 2020 we had 7, and in 2019 we had 1. So obviously a big change. Another, if you keep going down, you'll see kind of the property crimes and theft of things have increased in 2020 from 2019. Gas drive-offs technically are up 600%. We had 6 instead of 0. Harassment calls are up 8 instead of 0. Local ordinance violations are double, and that's because of the enforcement of dog issues, specifically waste, dog waste, and so those would be some of our ordinance violations. Noise complaints are way up. Of course, we have more people at home, more people working at home, more people easily bothered by noise and distractions and those kind of things. Thefts are way up. As you can see, we're 24 thefts in comparison to 9. So if you go way to the bottom of that page, we had 264 offensive cases. So cases that would require some type of enforcement, from comparison to 149 the last year. So that's up a 77% from one year to the next as far as offenses go. The next page is service-oriented type calls. So as you can see, the 911 disconnects are a lot higher. They're 120 out of 85 from the years past. Then the other cluster of things that I would guide you to would be check person, check property, and check property vacation checks. Those are way up. So again, we're seeing a lot more property checks, people checks. There's just a lot more people. So it's causing an increase in those type of calls. Our check property is up to 445. Now that means that we just have more properties to check. So when people go on vacation or they leave for a significant amount of time, we check those properties. And so these are requests for us to check their properties. So we've really started to partner. A lot of community service goes into that. Information cases are way up. They're up a significant percentage. Information cases are just simply that. People come to us and provide us information of some sort, one way or another, whether it's a criminal matter or it's just wanting us to know something about the community. That again plays into a lot of just being out in the community, garnering that relationship to give people more of that one-on-one opportunity to provide us information and kind of work with us. If you go to the next page, which is still service calls, guide your attention to suspicious vehicles. That is way up, 31 reported in 2020 in comparison to 9. Again, that has a lot to do with us promoting, people calling us on things that might just not seem right in their neighborhood. So again, that's a lot of PR to generate that. And from those calls, we've probably had more offenses, because if we get a suspicious vehicle, you might find other things. So they kind of correlate. So if you go to the bottom of that total service calls, we had 1,548 service calls, comparison to 1,160 in 2019. That's about a 33% increase. Then we go into traffic. Now traffic, when I received feedback right away when I started here, there was a lot of complaining about traffic, speeding, going through stop signs. That hasn't changed. We still get that a lot. So as you can see, our traffic complaints, opening up those opportunities for conversation have generated almost a double increase in people feeling like they can complain. Now, doesn't mean that there's more traffic or less traffic. I think there's just traffic, right? This town sees a lot of traffic, but people are complaining at a higher rate. And in response to that, I'll guide you down to the traffic stop. So traffic stop is simply a traffic warning. So when you stop somebody, it's a warning of a traffic. So if you could, as you can see, in 2020, we had 269 traffic warnings in comparison to 94 the year before. So I have really stepped up our enforcement and really pushed our staff. That's a 186% increase just from one year to the next, trying to get people to slow down, take their time, not being heavy-handed in citations, because if you look up a little bit, traffic arrests are what you would consider a citation. When you arrest somebody with a ticket, that's where that number goes. And if you see, we had 67 citations versus 104 the year before. So we've become less hard on enforcement, writing tickets, and more so just at being a lot more educational and slowing people down. So it's kind of a balance, and every year will kind of fluctuate a little bit with regards to that. So overall, you'll see that we had 2,324 calls for total service, traffic service, and offense type calls from difference about 38, almost 39% increase overall productivity from our department from one year to the next. So that's all I have for that portion of it. The next page, I know that this is a hot topic, and it's going to be a hot topic in the coming months, I would imagine. These are the ATV violations or ATV complaints. We had 6 since the program has begun. As you can see, by looking to the far right, you can see which officer was assigned those. And as you can see, 3 of the 6 are mine. What that means is somebody has contacted me well after it's happened just to complain about something. It wasn't an actual call. So this is usually calling the chief to complain about an incident, not giving us a fair opportunity to actually catch somebody in the act. It's more informational. And if I remember correctly, I think one of the other 3 were actual same thing. Somebody called in a day or 2 after the event, and it just happened to be Scott that caught those cases. And Scott has caught the other 3. So it's not an overwhelming problem. We haven't seen any citations. All this has been, most of it's been informative. And if I remember correctly, 3, if not 4 of these cases were not violations of law. So there was a complaint, something like, for instance, after hours, and then we said there isn't after hours, or I thought there was a time frame where they couldn't drive, things like that. So we've been kind of keeping a special eye on this because we know it's going to be sunset soon, and so that's that. The last 2 pages, they're self-explanatory. They're significant events that I chose. There's several other ones that I could have chosen, but I wanted you to see just kind of the type of calls that we receive that would garner some investigation and would create significant workload for my staff, myself. So those are kind of calls that have happened here. So when you hear things like not a lot happens here, this is but just a little bit of a little snippet of what does happen. That the sexual assault, I actually handled that myself, and that took multiple months to investigate and to identify a person who had sexually assaulted multiple people, not just the person in town. So as you can see, those are significant. The last page, I'll direct your attention to projects and programs that we were successful with and have worked on. Obviously, the new mission statement and core values of the department are updated. We're going to be replacing the Squad 13, which is well overdue, and replacing the department server. That was all part of capital improvement. We have updated our patch, which Lori mentioned earlier. Our badges will be updated. We've participated in a lot of community-oriented things like the parades, Thanksgiving initiative, Christmas initiative, where we partnered with people to help feed some of the community that were in need. So those were big PR things and really made my staff feel good, and especially in these times. And then the last two, which are big programs that probably were desperately needed over the course of the last couple decades. But TASER programs are now in effect, and less than lethal are in effect. So I'm working on acquiring the equipment and scheduling training. And so that this will be something that will be in, you'll start to see it before the summer. Future initiatives. So right now what I'm working on is the emergency operation plan. I'm updating that to cover best practice. I'm working with emergency management, the state and Dane County, updating all department policies. Some of them are even up to 10 years old, so they require updating, and again, looking at best practices. Because of the policy updates, I'll need to update the field training manual, which is kind of both work hand in hand, because that's what trains the future of the department. And then the other thing that you will see is if time permits, I'm going to update the website and the Facebook page to be more transparent, and to provide documents like this to be available on our web page, and any kind of records and our policies and those kind of things. So it'll be something where people can just go to our web page and see all of this stuff, and not have to even require open record requests. It'll all be visible for all to see and to examine. So that's my hopes. We'll see as much as I can, and as much as I can accomplish, and hopefully 2020 report will reflect that those things have been accomplished.
Wow, thank you so much.
That's great. Question, are you planning to do this monthly incident report every month and have it at the meeting?
Yeah. The only reason I didn't do this, what I'll probably do is in the next meeting, I'll just do the first 3 months. I'll probably do that every year, and just because this one's kind of a heavy loaded, and I knew that we were going to be working a little bit on the body cams. So but yes, the answer is yes. I'll be providing a monthly update of what we're handling.
How is your staff with everything going up? Is your staff still like another officer? I mean,
we're very busy, and
yeah.
and we're just so one of the things that has happened is the SRO is back in the school full time, and so he was helping with these cases, and so now him being full time in the SRO leaves me on days by myself, and so finding time to fit all of this gets to be really tedious. Last year, for instance, I worked over 350 to 400, almost 400 hours beyond the paid hours. So I can't do that always. And I knew that this first year or two, I'm going to have to put in some time, because we have some things that need to be fixed. But so we'll have to explore that. But I think we're fine. I mean, I'm handling investigations along with Kim Reddy, our lieutenant. And so I think we'll be okay. If it gets to be where we're just year after year we're flooded, then yes. Or if it starts affecting our job load, yeah, I think we'll have to start to look at other options. Yeah. And and at some point there may be the need to actually have a chief that just does chief stuff, and not handles calls and investigations, and focuses on just being part of emergency management and doing those kind of things. But we're not there yet. I think we're okay. So.
I was just thinking, like in the newsletter for next month, are you going to do like a spring, make sure you like the cars? Is there going to be something in the newsletter?
Yep, that's what I'm working on now. I'm going to be, the actual newsletter is due here at second week in March. And so I was going to include, obviously, some of the waste. We get a lot of dog complaints with dog waste. So I'm going to include that. And then I can include, what did you say with, I can include several topics, but what was that other topic?
Like make sure you lock your cars with, spring, just people being out and about more.
Sure, yeah.
I think a little bullet on inattentive driving would be great. I see a lot of that.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
okay. Yeah, if you guys ever think of anything, just send me an email and I could definitely include it in somehow include it in a newsletter at some point, so.
Okay.
Always looking for topics.
Yeah.
So unless anybody has any other questions, Kevin, I don't know if you have any questions. That basically covers my annual report for this year, and we'll see what happens next year.
Yeah, Tony, real quick. Local ordinance violation, what would be an example of that?
Dogs defecating on
Gotcha.
property. Yeah, so
Okay.
basically it would be our own violations. What else? Noise complaint, you know, if somebody was creating a noise complaint. Even disorderly acts can be local ordinance violations rather than arrestable and criminal sanction offenses. So we've adopted a lot of ordinances. So it could go from
Gotcha.
anywhere.
The only other question I have is related to going back to school and the phased, kind of hybrid.
Mhm.
Are there crossing guards that we have in place right now at the middle school?
I don't think that the crossing guard is in place yet. Most of
Okay.
our traffic is coming in by vehicle. There isn't a whole lot of foot traffic.
There's not. Okay. Yeah. Is
And
that something that will just be monitored?
yep, I
Okay.
think as we get into the full swing of things, I know we have someone hired and ready to do that job, but I'll
Gotcha.
check on that. But at this point, Roger, who's our SRO, is down there right at school zone time, and he's watching one school. Since he's the SRO, he watches Glacier Creek, and then I sit at Park and watch the traffic. And there isn't very many people walking to school right now. It's either being dropped off by bus, but mostly by vehicle. So we're
By
kind
vehicles.
of traffic.
Good for the moment, at least. Yep. Cool.
I think the beacon has helped a lot up by Glacier.
Yeah.
I mean, that traffic I feel is slowed down. I live right up there,
Mhm.
and I think that beacon
Yeah.
has helped a lot.
Okay.
No other questions here. Thanks, Tony. Great job on that.
Thanks, Kevin.
We'll move on to our discussion. Discussion of possible action regarding body camera program.
Yep. So you guys were provided with the policy that I created on the body cam, giving you just an opportunity to read it, mull it over, do some research and apply different things. The last page that I provided was the 6 questions. So I think President Langfeld kind of wants a process used to add new programs. And so the 5 questions he wants answered, I think, when there's going to be a new program or a added cost to something is why do we want the program? What is the initial cost of the program? Ongoing cost of the program? Level of priority from 1 to 5, being 5 being least and 1 being top priority. And then policy regarding the use, if that applies, and in this case it does, and then the process we're going to be taking. So I think, the easy ones to answer is why do we want this program? I think everybody here can agree that there's some benefits to it. And I think that's going to be easy to answer, but again, it's something that we can all discuss and have a clear vision as to why we want it. What is the initial cost? My plan is to bring in our tech to provide us with what that will cost initially to bring in these things, along with maybe some bids as far as the actual cameras. He will also help us to answer the ongoing costs, like what will it cost to maintain this program. Then level of priority kind of falls under the same as the question number 1. And then policy regarding use is something that we're obviously working on now. And then the process we're going to take, how are we going to vet this through. So we had talked about getting this on a public forum and those kind of things. So we got to start thinking about timelines. So, I mean, we can either start discussing this, or now that you have these questions, maybe come prepared to the next meeting with answers to these questions. I don't know, however you guys think we should proceed.
So you were thinking you were gonna have somebody come into this meeting and talk to us about all of this?
Yeah, well, at least the two, like the costs. I mean, I can get someone to come in and talk to us about what it's going to cost to initially set up, and then what it's going to cost, ongoing costs. Because I think that will affect a lot of our decisions, whether we're going to move forward with the program or not. The other ones I think are more isolated to this committee, like why do you want the program? What level do you think it should be at? Policy regarding use, will you have a policy? You know, I think we could tweak it and kind of look at it. And then the process we're going to take it is something that we can kind of say, okay, we're going to, you know, get this policy written. We're going to have a public forum, let's say, you know, early summer, those kind of things. We start, you know, creating a timeline.
A question.
Yeah.
What does, or what's everyone's thought on if somebody comes in, another chief who has implemented the body cameras, to see how that's
Yeah.
changed, how it makes the officers feel,
Yep.
and get some information?
Yeah, we can invite a couple of chiefs. I mean, that's a good idea. Maybe that will help us understand priority and answer why we want the body
Yeah.
cam. So I guess I'm just looking for direction from you. How do you, you know, at this next, now that you have these questions, you know, we can kind of answer them throughout the month. You really look into them. Again, you know, if you have already some suggestions about the body cam policy, those kind of things. And then let me know what meeting you want me to start inviting people, so I can give people enough time, you know, a chief to Zoom in and have a conversation, or a tech to Zoom in and have those conversations.
Well, I think that, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think we all agree this is something we believe in enough that we're moving forward. So I think we've answered that. I think perhaps, the obvious questions are going to be is what's this going to cost and what's the ongoing cost? I think we should find that out sooner than later.
Okay.
You do a good job with policies. I've read your policies and I've written policies. I think you do a good job. I'm not uncomfortable with policy. But that can be developed. You could be working on it while we're doing these other things, so that we're kind of ready for the board and for the public. We have a public hearing about
Sure.
what does this mean. So I think for me, I always want to be able to answer and be, okay, so what's that going to cost? What's, you know, I'd like to hear that whole thing, what we're looking at down the road. I think we can be developing the policy as we go, so we're ready for it. And then just get ready for public hearing, garner public input. And if we're well versed on this, then we can actually talk to the public through this committee, because we're educated on it.
Okay.
And just be ready so that it doesn't drag out. So we have all this done, so they can go to the board and say, okay, here. We don't get into, well, what about this? What about that? What about, let's just get it all done and give it to the board so that we can roll.
So how about if we just create a timeline right now, as part of our process taken, maybe by April, or at our April meeting, I invite a chief to Zoom in, a chief or two to Zoom in and give us his perspective on body cams. And then I will also invite our tech to give us the ongoing costs of maintaining such a program. And then I will get the initial costs. I can get those initial costs. I already have them, of what it's going to initially cost us, because I had those prepared when we first started talking about this. So I can bring those to the next meeting or provide them as part of the packet of what that's gonna, the initial cost that will, kind of like what we did with tasers and less than lethal. Yeah. Yeah, so, well, I can bring all of this in our April meeting, so you guys have time, so you can kind of hear it, and then maybe, and that'll give you time to kind of mull it over, and then in May, we can revisit everything we've learned. And maybe just have it be an informational meeting on these topics. I'll just list them in our agenda as part of kind of what we're gonna hear from, you know. Kevin, does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So what would be the final goal for proposal and vote to recommend?
So I think for the April meeting, I will bring, it'll be more of an informational meeting.
That makes sense.
Now that we have a direction from this committee, I'll bring in a chief to speak about the program, you know, a chief or two to speak about body cam programs. That will kind of cover question 1 and help us answer how much priority this is. So that would help us answer number 4. I'll bring in the tech that will help us answer question 2, part of question 2 and part of question 3, which is ongoing costs and initial costs. I will also, for question 2, I already have some information about initial costs for the actual product, what it would cost, and to update our server to meet that cost. So
Yep.
I can bring that in. So that's going to answer those 4 questions by just having that information for our April meeting. And then as far as policy, you have a policy. I think I've read the policy over and over, but if there's things that you would like to see added, or if you want me to work with Jay on having him add his he does have an extensive knowledge of law enforcement. If that, you know, if you want me to send it to him and then he could send it back with some recommendations, those kind of things, I could at least vet the policy through Jay, and that might give us a little bit more information to prepare. So I can do that before the next meeting as well. And that should do it. And then I think after we receive this information in April, we'll schedule our May meeting and mull over everything. Kind of that gives us, instead of trying to listen to all of them and then try to discuss it too, maybe just a listening session about all of this, give us some time to think about it. And then in May, we come back and really answer these questions together. So we have the questions answered as far as the costs and all those things, and then start planning our public forum of how, where, when are we going to do that? How are we going to get this information out? Once we have it as a unit, we have all the information.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The one thing I'm wondering about is how much offline education can be done for, say, the stakeholders that are going to be voting. So with the village board, how much education and or kind of Q&A can be done offline that doesn't have to, you know, say be taken within the village board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point, you know, I would say, you know, either, I guess my recommendation would be that prior to this ever going to the public, that there would be some vetting amongst even interested village board members
Mm-hmm.
to either participate or listen in on that information session. At least extend that invite, so we're not trying to repackage and sell the program that and address some questions that we don't have the experience on.
Yeah. Well,
But
one
others
of the,
others do.
I completely understand, and one of the frustrations I have is village board gets all of this. They get everything that you get. Michael is online right now, so he's listening to. He's a board member. He's listening to what we're discussing here, so he's preparing himself. So we invite them already as part of our process. But if you would like, I could create an email or a memo letter specifically asking them to please come to a meeting if that's the direction you guys would want.
Yeah, I think that that extra extension of an invite to a not even time sensitive, a critical discussion from
Okay.
some external testimonials or experts, I think would be beneficial.
Okay.
And then my only other comment is I understand the key questions as it relates to a process to kind of go through the 6. I would like to make sure that we place in here as maybe part of the why, or just maybe even as a replacement to level of priority, is the risk of not doing this, and address some of those.
Sure. Okay.
We've discussed them informally, but I think that is a critical piece. Priority is a little tricky in that priority relative to what is this committee, the things that pass through this committee, or so we would just preface that priority maybe a little bit with priority being driven by the risk of not doing something.
Yeah, I think we could just, if the committee's okay with it, I'll just add a 7th question, maybe under that, and maybe kind of write these questions in order. Right now, they're kind of all over the place, but I'll write them in order so they kind of make sense and it's easier to explain. And then at the request of this committee, I will send out a special invite to our next meeting after I have confirmed that I have a chief and a tech that can come, so it doesn't waste their time. We'll have to also do some things within our agenda, because we're creating a quorum, and so that creates some additional things that I have to cover. So I'll have to make sure that Bill is aware of this and that we are covered that way.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing, I was just thinking to invite everybody, even those that are running or not. I mean, my thoughts have been, if they're going to run, they're obviously interested citizens in the community anyway. So whether they're successful or not, so I'll probably extend it to everybody who is. The invitation will be to current board members and anybody who is running.
I have
Yeah, good idea.
Top 3, we'll do the overview, talk about policy, since this is going to be huge for you to put together. If June is just they getting together, talking what you feel policy is about, and kind of going over that, and then our July meeting, come back together, share that. Maybe Jay is here also, and again invite the board, because that was a huge debacle with the tasers and stuff. So we would have 2 meetings for the village board and anyone else who's interested at these places.
Yep.
Where does all this fit?
So it is not something that I would even try to make a budget adjustment for this year. So I think we have to be strategic in that this is something we workflow through the summer, and come August is about the time that budget for the next year. So yeah, to try to fit this through the summer months with the public forum, get as much information out, invite as many people as we can, answer as many questions as we can, and then start working it into the budget for the coming year as a capital improvement type project, or add it to our budget somehow. So it will be above and beyond what we normally would have, because without actually having the numbers in front of me, it's going to be in the ballpark of what we've spent for the tasers and less than lethal combined. There'll be some cost, around that ballpark area, but we'll know more once we get to that. But I think if we can be prepared by August to start presenting this as a budget item for the coming year. Yeah.
Are there grants out there at all for these?
Right now, none that are available that I've learned of, but
Okay.
it's definitely something that we can continue to explore.
Okay.
So I can look into that too.
Tony, what's been the reaction of your officers to this idea of having body cams?
Not one of them has said they're not supportive of it. Some of them are much more eager than others. It depends on a lot of things. Body cams are kind of that thing that officers are sometimes afraid of, not because of they're doing something wrong, but they fear that they're being watched and critiqued and those kind of things. I have not had a single officer say I absolutely opposed to it. I've had officers concerned about, okay, what is this going to be used for and those kind of things. So that's my job to explain to them that, and I have already. It's a tool to be able to identify training moments, opportunities for that. What I have found over the course of using them for 2 decades is that they tell a story that you can't really write on a piece of paper, and 9 times out of 10 they save you from a pointless allegation that just wasn't so. They also help identify things that when you're documenting that you might have missed just because there's so much going on at a given time. So I look at it as a good tool, but there is that slight component of something new. But it's no different than when I introduced the idea of tasers and less than lethal. It's something that they weren't used to. So it's new, it's different, but all of them were on board. So there isn't anybody who's opposed to them.
Doug, you had a question?
Yeah, just more of a comment based on the timeline. At the public forum, or maybe even you have a public forum that's just focused on the taser piece, but with what our timeline looks like, it's really close to National Night Out, which also might be a good time to get not all of this data, but just some of this data, because I think there are misconceptions in our village of what really is safe or unsafe, or what is a big problem or what isn't a big problem. It would be kind of a funner forum or event to get some people together and talk about law enforcement or lieutenant driving or something like that. It might fit in there as another avenue to get some feedback.
Sure. Yeah. Specifically with the body cams, you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Would your officers be interested? Would that be helpful with hearing a few of the other officers, what their view is?
For sure. I mean, maybe I could see if any one of them would be willing to just speak about this. And so,
I think
I kind of put here officer opinion.
Yeah.
In everything that I've done, any changes that I've made, I've involved them from A to Z, because if there is no buy-in in them, then it's just not going to work. You know, if I have to fight uphill for any program, it's not even, it's not worth it, because they're the ones that are having to use it. So I haven't had anybody against this or anything. They've, everybody has had questions. So then, what's going to happen with this, or how would we carry them, or what are policies surrounded? What if I forget to turn it on? Am I going to get in trouble? Those kind of things. So legitimate questions that anybody would have. So so I think, most definitely we could.
I think maybe that would help the community feel comfortable that, we've heard from the officers, we've heard from people outside of Cross Plains Chiefs, and the big picture then. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I think that much like the taser, the stuff we've gone through, there was a perception by the public that the police department already had it. And I think that may even be the same case here. And so I think if we do this outreach with the public, we will do this, and hopefully it'll be a healthy exchange of good information. But if it turns out to be, we're not getting a big turnout, we're not getting, uproar and a lot of concern and phone calls and everything, then we move forward. Don't delay on this. Trying to make sure that I think that there may be a perception out there.
Well, I think you're definitely on the right page because there's cameras everywhere. So I think that most of our cases, first thing, if we have a criminal offense, first thing we think of is were there any cameras in the area to help us capture, whatever happened. So I think those days of recording most of our phones have high type of visibility cameras. So, I don't think that that's an issue. It's garnering, what is, that big brother, what are they watching? And I think officers would say the same thing, what is the supervisors trying to catch here? It's the same thing that I thought when I was a young officer or even an officer with time. I mean, it's the same perceptions for people as what are they doing, but I think if we have a good policy and good public opinion, and if this ultimately is like the community absolutely doesn't want it, I'm going to support that. I mean, it's just a tool that has some value and it's something we need to look at. But ultimately, I believe that a police department is only as strong as their community. So if the community comes out and says, we absolutely don't want these things, then I think it's our job to say, okay, well, then we won't have them. And so I don't think that's the case because in speaking to the community about this, I have had that where people say, I thought you had cameras. Well, we do in the squad cars, but we don't have them on our person. So I haven't had one single person say I'd be opposed to that. Most people are, they believe in cameras. So.
What about putting that we're going to be having a meeting at our next public safety in the newsletter?
Yep.
I know that was concerning with the ATV, UTV, that nobody seen it in certain areas of the community. So
Sure.
we get it out there, cover ourselves, and it's going to be on Zoom and ways that they can get in. Because I agree, if this is our timeline and we're not going beyond it, I think need to stick to it and get it out there every month that everyone's welcome to come to it. This is what our important topic is.
So I think if I'm hearing you right, April will be an informational time. May will be kind of a discussion of what we've learned. And then June, maybe we may just have a very small meeting, just an update or even skip a meeting for time to really work on the policy and vet it to maybe even other departments or like Jay and iron this out.
Yeah.
And then in July, have a plan our public forum after a meeting, so we can kind of gather our thoughts and be prepared to answer those questions. And then in August, present it as part of an agenda item for the board. So we would take it up in August as a final product. This is what we want recommended. And then August, we would move it on as a recommendation for the budget.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think in June, you let us know, if it's a lot for you to do.
Mhm.
So if you just need June to say, I'm going to just do everything and we don't have a meeting, take the time to
We'll just
do
kind
what
of
you
play
need to do.
play it by ear. But maybe June could be the informational meeting, provide it to Jay and invite Jay in June meeting to come here and maybe give us his take on it. And those
I
kind of
really
things.
like the idea of going through it in a staff meeting with staff.
Mhm.
I think the department heads should do a little bit more of that,
Mhm.
and board members should trust that work a
Mhm.
little more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Board meetings are intense.
Yeah.
So I think we have a good process. Kevin, is that okay with you?
Yeah, I totally agree that there's a lot of work that I think can be done to get aligned on the facts and a lot of the Q&A that can be done in advance of the final proposal, let alone the village being able to, the board being able to vote on it.
Okay. All right.
Move on, future items of discussion. I think we have that, body cameras are, if something that's coming up, we can always add it. Item. Our next meeting date.
I think it's April 6th. Gotta look at the calendar.
Tuesday after Easter.
Yeah, so it is, it's April 6th. April 6th at 7.
You said it's election.
Pretty sure it was 6.
I think so.
That'd be right.
Okay.
Is that gonna be it? Except April 6th?
April 6th at 7.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
The time and day.
Okay.
I'll move to adjourn.
What? You like to join?
All right, second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's
Okay.
adjourn.
Good night,
care, guys.
everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good meeting.